Coming up, we hit the streets over the summer to get your views on all things Canadian. From New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island, this is Outburst. Hello and welcome to Outburst. I'm Glenn McGuinness. Well, with a brand new government elected last fall, Canadians have now had time to examine the issues as well as how the federal government is moving forward with them. So we sent our cameras out in Atlantic Canada to find out how they're doing so far. Our question: what is the Eastern view of the federal government?
I think the federal government is doing a pretty good job under the circumstances, given all the sort of challenges that have happened, you know, right to the fire in Fort McMurray, to the things that are going on internationally. It's a very difficult time, as it always is. There are always challenges, but to this point I'm, you know, pretty satisfied with the way that the government's been operating.
I don't know, my take on it, I think right now Islanders and Maritimers, I think, like the emotional feel of the government right now. It feels more inclusive, but I think there's a concern growing that maybe some of that is just window dressing, that we're not going to see the progressiveness we had hoped for.
Okay, and why would you say that?
Well, they seem to be slow to respond to criticisms. For example, the bill that's just been revised by Senate around assisted dying, right? They didn't seem to be very responsive to community feedback. Same thing, there seems to be a pretty deaf ear towards the TPP negotiations or revisiting what that means. So, yeah, there's just a sense that a lot of progressive causes aren't being revisited by this government.
Well, they don't do an awful lot for us here in Eastern Canada. They seem to support what's happening in Central Canada, and they sort of forget what happens on the East Coast, although we pay quite a bit of taxes into the federal government.
I think that we are in a new energy. Feels really good, feels really young, and I think we need to go in that direction because the old was getting kind of stifling, and I think I agree philosophically with Mr. Trudeau very much in his kind of infrastructure and investing in the future to change the economy, and I feel pretty good about it. Pretty good, yeah.
I love this current government. I think he's doing a good job, and I was a little concerned when he walked across the aisle and pushed that guy. That little red flag went up for me. But I think he brings a new juice, I think a new energy. I was glad Harper was over. What else? A little impetuous, I think. They need to settle down a little bit. That'll come with time, hopefully.
I think there's a lot of mixed opinions. A lot of times what's good for the other parts of the country doesn't translate to here. We have a lot of unemployment, so there's a bit of, I know there's a lot of mixed reviews. I think with the Trudeau government, obviously, there was a lot of support there for that. Pretty much all of the Maritimes went red, so it was... But that being said, I think I think it's just a mixed bag there. So,
my perspective is that New Brunswickers are very trusting of government, actually, and you know, see the federal government as having a positive role to play here in our development, and as a small place with you know, its own set of issues, and I think also. You know, we have a lot of respect for the MPs that we've sent to Ottawa, and yeah, I think there's a much more positive view here than you might think in other places, from other places.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, as someone that just kind of stepped into the voting world and everything, I'd say we are pretty trusting too. I'd say, yeah, New Brunswick has a pretty positive outlook on it. So.
Not overly positively. I mean, I come from a rural area, so generally it's not the most positive responses. But especially the current government. I mean, I work in the firearms industry, so our current government is not viewed very positively in my industry.
How so?
Well, just the changes that the government has made towards firearms laws and how they restrict the use and possession of firearms is not positive towards the industry.
Based on the last election, since the Trudeau government got such a strong support, I do think that we have strong hopes for what he can do for the region in terms of the transfer payment arrangements and restoring some of the agreements that we had in the past as a region.
What is the capital of New Brunswick? Moncton, Fredericton, or St. John? Moncton, Fredericton, or St. John?
I would say St. John.
I think Moncton.
St. John.
St. John.
Fredericton.
Fredericton.
It is Fredericton. Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Fredericton became the capital of New Brunswick on April 25th, 1785. What is New Brunswick's provincial flower? Purple violets, white trillium, or Mayflower? Purple violet, white trillium, or Mayflower?
Mayflower. White trillium.
I'm just gonna guess it's like the Mayflower.
White trillium? The purple violet? Yeah.
It is purple violet. Yes. New Brunswick's provincial flower is the purple violet, a perennial which blooms between May and July. It was adopted in 1936. Economic opportunities in Canada have always been varied. While some regions enjoy a strong economy, other regions are struggling. Atlantic Canada is one area where many young people have left to find better opportunities elsewhere. So we sent our cameras out in that region with this question: what more can be done to improve the economy in Eastern Canada?
Wow. That's a tall order. Like, successive governments, municipal, provincial, national, have tried to up that, and there's some pretty long-standing historical causes, right? So I think that's expecting any one group to just magically turn it around is going to be pretty tough. But I think in the long run, and this is going to sound like a platitude, but we need to figure out a way to grow our own industries, right?
Eastern Canada. Well, we could try to promote our tourism a bit more. We have a lot of exciting, like summertime is a lovely time in Atlantic Canada, so we could promote tourism. We could try to, I don't know how we would have job creation, but job creation would be beneficial. So job creation, tourism would both be really helpful for Atlantic Canada.
Good question. I think to be perhaps a little bit more present in Eastern Canada. I know of late a lot of the federal government presence has been eroded quite a bit in Eastern Canada, and in terms of jobs and things, I think it's important that we have that support. The programs are certainly there, and I'm glad to see that those are continuing, and I would like to see some things kind of reinstated that I feel that in Eastern Canada we've lost quite a bit in the last few years.
Oh yeah, I know I have some friends in Newfoundland, and they've been suffering for a long time, a lot longer than Alberta has. So hopefully the spotlight will get put on them as well and get them out of a lot of economic trouble that they've been suffering. The cod fishery is just kind of coming back into its own, but they still have a lot of other difficulties economically, yeah.
Like in Prince Edward Island here in general, I mean, tourism is one of our biggest industries, so infrastructure improvement leads to improved tourism experiences, leads to more tourism, leads to more economic growth in the area, so.
Quite frankly, I think there are enough tourists here in the summer. And it's short and you don't go down. So, and I think the IT, the tech stuff is great because that can be done from everywhere, as we found. My husband runs his business from here quite over the world quite easily. It's not a problem. And I think that's the kind of thing we need to do.
That is such a profound question. It really is. I've been talking to I feel like a little bubbling underneath starting to go on. I think Wade McLaughlin here in PEI is doing a fabulous job about revitalizing thinking about the economy and that we can actually grow it. And so I'm starting to see little signs of that as opposed to there's nothing we can do, it's game over. So that negative thinking that was present, I think is beginning to turn, which I love.
I think a lot of those initiatives need to happen more locally or from provincial government. Federal government probably supporting larger systems such as agriculture and fisheries is where we need their support, and then our provincial government more for our tourism industry.
Okay.
With the Atlantic region, I think it's a complicated issue. We do hear a lot about getting jobs. I think, yes, we do need to get jobs, but I think it's a multi-tiered approach that we have to take. We have to make a pro-business environment for one, and we need to both have support channels for people to want to stay in the region. Whether again that be with enticing companies to come here, or even through the social services provided, and either restructuring or possibly even providing revamped or new services. So again, I think it's a mixed approach, and I think both the Conservatives and maybe even the Liberals and the NDP, I mean, there's a whole host of approaches that we can take to the table, and I do think it has to be a bipartisan effort.
One of the few growing industries in the province is the craft beer industry, and we've had a lot of breweries pop up, and there's some limitations there that really are just don't really make sense in terms of a free economy and all that. So I think that's one of them. In terms of others, I think there's a lot of things that you could do differently. Off the top of my head, I couldn't really mention any, but definitely some change for sure.
I wish I had the answer to that one. It's really a tough one, and I don't know what can be done. I don't think government handouts is the way to go, but we have to really look at what our strengths are and try to build on those.
It's one of Canada's founding provinces back in 1867 and home to Canada's oldest independent brewery. Here's some quick facts about the province of New Brunswick. New Brunswick is Canada's only officially bilingual province. 1/3 of its inhabitants are French-speaking. It is also one of Canada's founding provinces, along with Quebec, Ontario, and Nova Scotia. Established in 1785, the University of New Brunswick is Canada's first English-speaking university and the first public university in North America. The first Miss Canada is from St. John, New Brunswick. Winifred Blair was crowned Miss Canada in Montreal on February 10, 1923. The longest covered bridge in the world can be found in Heartland, New Brunswick. The bridge is 390 meters long. And those are just a few facts about the province of New Brunswick.
The British monarchy has always been an important part of the Canadian fabric. But all history aside, there are some who would like to break ties with the royals, while there are others who are quite proud of our long-standing relationship with Buckingham Palace. So we sent our cameras out to ask if this is a tradition worth keeping. Our question: does Canada need the monarchy?
She's a mentor. The monarchy is a mentor. The whole monarchy is a mentor. It's not just the Queen. It's the family. It's what they've stood for all these years. It helps to hold us together, keep our lives in perspective. Just a really good role model and somebody to look up to in a positive way.
Well, it's part of our culture. Being an Acadian, I might have a different point of view about how that went for us as a culture. And so I'm glad that our culture persists in this province in particular. But it is part of our history and our story, and so, yeah.
What do you think?
I agree. It is definitely a cultural thing. All my family is from there, so I think that's definitely a cultural thing, and I think it's something that's always been that way, so it probably will be for a while.
This is a loyalist town.
Yeah.
No.
And why?
I think we're better off on our own. Yeah, because they're over there, and they're not involved with Canada as a whole. Like, I mean, they come visit every now and then, but they don't know what it's about. So no, I think we'd be better off without them. Sorry.
Doesn't make sense in this day and age to stick to archaic traditions like the monarchy. They serve no purpose, and we don't need idols. We don't need figureheads. We're a functioning society of educated people.
How about you? What do you think?
I think the monarchy is important to a certain degree. Like, it's nice to have roots and have something to base like our society off of. Now, they aren't necessarily important in our like day-to-day life, but when it comes to the court system and like how our society functions on a larger scale. I guess it's more important in that sense.
We love the Queen. I think it let us have some strong background, and why let go of something like that has such a huge history, you know? It's something that you'd like to let your kids know and your grandkids know. It's something to be proud of, so it's not adding any weight. I would rather keep it.
Personally, I do not think so. I know there's a lot of history and culture and tradition there. That being said, I think we could separate ourselves from that. I think we especially Canada being coming up on almost 150 years now, I think we've kind of built our identity out enough that we don't need to rely on a lot of that anymore. But that being said, there's still an appreciation there of the culture, the tradition. But like I said, our identity is there if we want it. It's just a matter of how people feel.
I'll be unpopular with my family on this one. Probably not. But there is something catching about it, too, that really, I think, pulls us together a little bit.
No.
Or not?
I mean, I get that it's nice to have some sort of figurehead or head of state person, but I mean, the monarchy is kind of external to us anyway. I certainly can respect that we have traditionalists in our country who would like to keep it, but there have been a few times where actually there's been a challenge for the monarchy to maybe actually step in and say something or do something about, hey, the way you guys are heading might be a problem, and it never has. So the idea that the monarchy is supposed to be sort of another second thought on things isn't panning out. So if it's just window dressing, quite frankly, in this day and age, can we afford it?
I think the monarchy is a symbol, and I certainly respect the fact that we have that symbol there, and I think it's probably there for some good reasons. At the same time, I think it's something that needs to be a little bit modernized, and I think it is in the process of modernization. So I really don't have a problem with the monarchy, even though I'm Acadian French. It's fine, and I think it has a certain place, especially in our historical and heritage context.
Oh, I love the monarchy. Yep, they're great. We just watched the Queen's birthday, all the pomp and circumstance. I think it's a very positive part of our history and culture. So yeah, oh yeah, let them rock on.
She's the only queen that I've known my whole life. So, and we will never see another. In my lifetime, we'll never see another queen because the heirs are all males for the next little while. So,
it's history. It's all it is. It's not the future, and I think it should stay in the history books. Yeah.
I think she's wonderful. She provides stability, and I want William. I think Charles can. I think it should go from Elizabeth to William.
Personally, no. I think it's a waste. Yeah. It's a waste of money to have a lieutenant governor in every province. History is great, but things change, and I think at some point we'll probably get rid of it. Maybe not in my lifetime, but I think at some point when the connection is lost. There's still quite a few monarchists around, so I think when as time goes by, I think we may see less of a connection. So, but personally, I'm not a fan, no.
This province was once known as Ile Saint-Jean to early French settlers and is home to Anne of Green Gables. I'm of course talking about Prince Edward Island. Prince Edward Island was discovered by the French explorer Jacques Cartier in 1534. The island was named Prince Edward in 1799 in honor of Queen Victoria's father, Edward, Duke of Kent. Charlottetown takes its name from Queen Charlotte, the wife of King George III. Completed in 1997, the Confederation Bridge joins PEI to New Brunswick. It is the longest bridge in the world over ice-covered waters. PEI is Canada's only province with no land boundary. And those are just a few facts about the province of Prince Edward Island.
Canada has some of the most stunning scenery on Earth, and for such a large country, our variety of nature is incredible. So we took to the streets with this question: what makes your part of the country so unique?
The people. Yes,
The people, definitely. East Coast, all the way. Just the friendliness of the people, our acceptance of each other, how we pull together. I just think we're very unique, and that's what does it, the people.
I just think that everybody's around here is really friendly. Like, I can walk at night and not be afraid.
Yeah, it's a pretty tight-knit community here in Fredericton. It's a small town, and as long as you don't know everybody, but you do, like, you feel comfortable here. It's a small town. It's very, like, especially for us if we're artists, like, we're all artists, so, like, there's a lot of art going around here and a lot of events, so, like, there's always something going on in Fredericton.
New Brunswickers, and I would say probably the Atlantic, we have skills that are lost to this country that really are an asset. We should be way more confident about who we are and what we do and what we have to contribute to this country than we are. For example, our skills in terms of, food. Hunting, fishing, growing food, our entrepreneurship, making things ourselves, doing things ourselves, our social capital. We are really connected to our neighbors and our community, and it's a very, very different kind of place that way.
The history here is amazing, and the people are great, I must admit, even if they do talk funny.
I think our sort of work-life balance, we recognize that. But there's that down-home feeling, the friendliness, the ability to stop and talk to people on the streets. We're not caught up in that big city atmosphere.
Oh, that's a good question. I've lived in Quebec, I've lived in Ontario, I've lived in BC. And oddly enough, they're all unique, and yet in every single one of them I feel like I'm at home. The Maritimes tend to be a little more socially stable, might be one way to phrase it. People have known each other and been connected to each other for a long time here. We give directions by, that used to be so-and-so's house, and take a right there. So I think there's sort of this stability in our social connections that's being challenged right now with immigration and with newcomers, and I think that's a great thing that's going to add some dynamicism, but it's a challenge for how we tend to forge friendships to actually reach out to folks that don't have that history with us.
Oh, it probably has to be the people and the experiences that we have here, the fact that we live with a lot of nature and that we appreciate simple things. It's not that we don't consume, and we are consumers, and we certainly have all the modern conveniences, I think, but I think we have the best of both worlds here. It's a little bit more of a laid-back lifestyle, and I think people really take the time to talk to one another and appreciate the small things that people do for one another. And I think it's really exciting that we're starting to see more immigration to PEI, newcomers coming. I think it's enriching our society here, so we're all learning.
Come on in, have dinner, sit down, you need to use the shower, you need to have some food. They're just so friendly and warm and inviting. Yeah, the people for sure.
They're welcoming, they're funny, they're quick-witted. And they're tough because they've dealt with a lot of ups and downs in the economy here, and still managed to have a smile and be friendly and open, despite not the easiest work situations for a lot of people. So, yeah.
I've been across Canada, literally from coast to coast. There's something about the Maritimes. There's an openness, there's a friendliness, there's the no-rush attitude that I experience in Toronto every day. I don't know, it's very, very special. In Vancouver, in the West Coast, you still have this bustle and, this rush thing, but I don't feel that here. It's laid back, if you wish. But the friendliness of the people, I mean, it's beyond description, really. Yeah.
I think it's a slower pace of life, and it's a nice place to raise a family, and it's a very beautiful part of Canada. All of Canada is beautiful, but this time of year, I think Atlantic Canada is amongst some of the best scenery in the country.
Well, the beauty, I think that you have to go there first. When we travel a lot and we come back, and the shades of green now, and I think certainly the beauty, and I think the the way of life. There's a less frantic way of life here, and I have to learn to slow down and to visit. We have a guy that works with us in our cottage, and we don't get a nail nailed unless we sit down and we talk for half an hour first. And I like that. I like that we talk to everybody. Everybody says hello to you pretty well on the street. Little things like when we're so confused when we come here, we go to cross the street, and no matter where you're crossing, the cars stop. And I think, well, why are they but they're stopping to let us cross the street, and there's a courtesy still here, and an ability to relate, sometimes too much. You know, in an island, everybody knows everything, but, you know, you kind of get used to that. But I really think it's respect for one another.
Oh, gosh. I think it's history, it's scenery, more and more the diversity. You know, a place like Charlottetown, which is the cradle of Confederation, which has beautiful scenery, restaurants, institutions, university, that for a place this size, it's wonderful. And people comment on that when they come.
Probably just our general familiarity with one another as a province, yeah. Because we're so small, you know, you can feel really connected to what's going on, to your history, to those with you, and to what your future will be together. Yeah.
Motorists in Prince Edward Island drove on the left side of the road until what year? 1914, 1924, or 1934?
Let's say 1934? 1924.
1914.
1934.
1914.
1924.
1924. In 1924, Prince Edward Island joined the rest of the continent in requiring motorists to drive on the right side of the road. At the time, local newspapers were full of warnings reminding islanders to no longer drive on the left. The Confederation Bridge connects PEI to which province? Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, or Quebec?
New Brunswick.
Nova Scotia.
Quebec.
Quebec.
Nova Scotia.
New Brunswick. I've driven it twice.
You've driven the bridge?
I have, yes.
It is New Brunswick.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
The Confederation Bridge is a bridge spanning the Abegweit Passage of the Northumberland Strait, linking Prince Edward Island with mainland New Brunswick. That's all for this episode of Outburst. Just a reminder, don't forget to check out our new CPAC TV To Go app and our CPAC Quiz Canada Trivia app. For more information, check our website, www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of all my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.